hit the button. Yeah, I did. Kind of a lovely day. Could be a little warmer, but we'll take it. Um, okay. Yeah, so still lots of stuff going on in the brain. Disconnected subjects and whatnot, so not the best time for making videos. But I'm here and I'll talk, so that's what I'll do. So anyway, I was thinking this is going to be I think we'll do physics, in a general sense, broad sense. The basic idea of gravity and the mechanism of the energy. What is energy anyway? Uh, you know, and the idea that you can't consume it. You really can't use energy up. It doesn't get used up. It's a transfer of something, and I would argue it's just a transfer of direction, of movement. The movement already exists in the universe, and it just keeps changing direction, pretty much. Its configuration anyway. So yeah, my you see, you can talk about going to the beginning, but the beginning is a place where you say, okay, you have to get there from some other place and look at the beginning. It's kind of like evolution. It all points to abiogenesis, but abiogenesis is the piece that we don't have a mechanism for it yet. Some people have theories, but nothing hard, nothing solid, finished, complete in terms of evidence. There's no fossil of the evolution of chemistry, and so you're stuck with a starting point that seems every piece of the rest of the evidence just points to it. And I guess what I would say in physics is, if you look at this machinery, I think it becomes apparent. It's apparently apparent to me that this photon stuff, the electromagnetic spectrum, is everything. Everything is just stuff moving at the speed of light. The speed of light stuff is the only stuff there is. And when you arrange it inside of a condensed space, you condense it, you trap it, it becomes what we call matter. It's still just photons. It's still just stuff going the speed of light. It's just going the speed of light in very strange direction. So this brings up gravity, just in the sense of, this phenomenon of gravity, where you can have a complete momentum change, completely reverse something's direction by throwing it into a gravity well and having it come out the other end. You even preserve the equal but opposite Newtonian mechanics of what went in comes out, in a sense, if the thing comes right back at you. So if I send something to the moon, catch it in the gravity, have it spin around the moon, and pop out the other end coming right back home again, the net effect on the moon is zero. Where the net effect on the thing I've changed the direction of is a complete shift in its momentum. But there was no other input was required. No consumption of anything was incurred. No, what can be said? The point being is that we even see this with light, is that you can have a perfect direction change. That's kind of what fiber optics relies on, is the fact that you can reflect light zillions of times, gazillions of times, and it produces no degrade in functionality. There's no obvious transmission of the energy into some other form. It's lossless in its what takes place, or loss minimum. And again, there's no such thing as loss. There's no so this gets a little tricky when you talk about items moving, because we think about things like heat and we think about that as being energy, but it's not really energy. It's the release of it's energy released. It's not energy put in. It's matter being converted into energy. It's the excitement of atoms, and in their excitement they lose pieces and create more excitement. You know, yeah, I don't want to get into that one. But yeah, it's just trying to trace the directional changes, or what action really is. I'll try to draw a picture of this, but so all you really have is light traveling at the speed of light, photons. So whether they're in radio waves or whether they're in cosmic rays, you have photons traveling the speed of light, and they get captured in mechanisms inside the atom that, like a moon traveling around the Earth, that distract the moon. The moon isn't going where it was intending to go. Doesn't have a go anywhere anymore. It's lost its directionality, and it's now just, it can go in any direction on release. So if I was to end gravity this instant, the moon would shoot off in a certain direction. If I waited till now, it would shoot off in a different direction. Its direction is now controlled by when the release point. And that works with the gravity thing too. When you change direction and it's not the opposite direction, there is a transfer of energy. Something goes away with less, or the thing that transferred that changed the direction you have an effect on it. So if you kept making right turns using the moon's gravity, you would eventually get the moon turning right. You would eventually drag it to compensate, because I think, you see, that's tricky. Yeah, maybe I'll leave that one alone. Yeah, no, let's not go there. Yeah, that one might get messy. It might not matter whether it's left or right. I mean, it might not matter whether it's not a complete reversal in terms of the balance. Yeah, I'm just not sure of that one. I have to think on it. Anyway, you know, this is complicated. The models are complicated enough. There's enough moving parts to make this where you have to be a little bit careful in where you're stepping. And I suppose that's what I'm sort of working on, is making a distinction between, I think, things we can say with confidence and things that are less certain. So anyway, yeah, I'm just thinking about these interactions are sort of important to think about, because this is really what happens when there's an interaction between a photon and any material surface. Is it's interacting with whatever that surface, that material is made of, and what it's excited, how excited it is, and how many electrons are on its surface. So now we can get into a volume argument that it could be argued that as more photons interact, they consume the character of that surface. They use up or fill the empty hole, so to speak. And if there's more coming in than holes to be filled, that you will change how the photons will be leaving. They won't leave the same. Now, I didn't think of this in terms of a gravitational argument, but I suppose it could be made that if you flood a gravitational field with mass, that eventually its gravity could be used up, absorbed by this new matter, and that it would be less likely to capture, not more likely to capture, something new coming in, but I don't think that'll work either. Yeah, so anyway, that just occurred to me, so let's not play with that one either. So I haven't given that any thought. But what I was thinking about was, the ultimate abstractions of, what happens to the light shooting out into the empty space, beyond what we call the barrier of the universe. There's light going that way, right? It's going where there isn't anything, the heading where nothing's headed before kind of light. And based on these gravitational theories, that gravitational effects may be minuscule at distance, but they still exist. So technically, the gravity that I'm part of, which is now the Earth, is radiating, creating a displacement in space that technically goes forever. And it wouldn't take much of a slight change. So if I had a rocket here that I was shooting up, and I just had a slight deviation in its trajectory, just very, very, very slight, a tiny, tiny 0.000000000, deflection in its angle of trajectory, and that was maintained through its course. Eventually, maintained as it was a function of its, say there was, say there was an atmosphere that went on forever, so you could have something that had a little tiny defect in one fin, so it just kept deflecting it just a tiny, tiny bit with each movement forward. Eventually that thing that I shot straight, that looked straight, is going to end up flying right back home again. It's going to boomerang. It's going to take maybe a long time for it to get back home, but it's going to come back home. So one could argue that the light escaping the universe is destined or doomed to come back home. Just is. Because it's traveling in a gravitational field that the universe is creating. So it has no choice but to eventually be consumed by that gravity. Assuming that its own momentum isn't, well, it really doesn't matter. I mean, eventually it wouldn't matter. It wouldn't matter what its momentum was. And certainly with something moving the speed of light, its momentum is set. But it's, what's the right word to say this? See, I use the word momentum for direction, which is really problematic with light, because light has one feature. It moves one Planck constant, per second. That's what it does. It moves a certain amount of distance per second. So anyway, it's inevitable that it would come back. No matter what its momentum is, it would just take it longer. But the deflection is always going to keep overwhelming the path, and it will eventually cause it to circle. I think that's a hard fact. I'll have to think through it a little more, but I don't think there's any way to avoid that. It has to end up coming back. And once it makes the transition, once it starts turning back, then it's going to be increasing its gravitation as it comes back. So it's escaping the gravity initially, and then once there's a threshold, a point of no return, or whatever you want to call it, where the gravity will start increasing, and so its direction will be even more forced to its origin. to the origin, or to the center of the gravity that it's being bent by. You know, the strongest net gravity. So, yeah, there's so many other things I wanted to get to. I got a whole thing on the momentum acceleration thing. You know, what keeps things moving and how they become moving. An explanation of that. So I'll do that. But yeah, this sort of, I do have to complement these videos, I think, with writing. So I'm going to have to start doing that with every video. I'll have to promise myself, I mean, not just talking video, every video where I'm making an argument, I'll have to establish the context of the argument. And, you know, just so, you know, we don't keep just doing this redundant thing. Let's have a record of the argument. Yeah, and, you know, what's been counter-argued and what has not. What has just been, you know, ignored. You know, well, it could be, and just left at that. You know, something a little more brave is what we're looking for. Braver. So anyway, well, let's see. I think that's about it. I think I've done my job. Oh dear. Yeah. Until next time. And such. Squirrels. Doing the sex thing. Yeah, 2 males. I get to rape her first. Nature. Till next time.